Wow. I don't think I can top any of that. My goodness. What a joy it has been to, just in the time we've been together, for the wonderful singing and centering that Sharon offered. Thank you so much, Sharon. And the choir, wow, that was beautiful. A mission statement for the earth. Scott, I love it. Chris Little, did you write that down for our mission purpose? I mean, come on now, that was pretty great. And it was a beautiful, beautiful mission statement. So good morning again. Welcome to our Earth Day Sunday celebration. I am so excited to be sharing this service with all of these wonderful leaders and with all of you. And I'm also really excited, very excited, as we begin, or perhaps I should say re-begin, which I don't even think that's a word, our re-energize, if you will, our earth or environmental ministry here at the UU congregation of Charlottesville. Let me just begin by thanking, this is like becoming Thanking Sharon Baiocco Sunday here, but I know many of you are aware, but some of you may not be, that Sharon has been engaged in environmental work and leadership here in our congregation for a number of years. And I know it was about, what, Sharon, 10 or 12 years ago that we were certified as a green sanctuary? 11. Okay, well, I was right, almost right there. And I am aware that Sharon's leadership played an instrumental role in seeing us through that process. The Green Sanctuary is a kind of a certification process that our denomination, the Unitarian Universalist Association, kind of sponsors, and they invite congregations to go through a very lengthy and detailed process where you set goals and you take a vote, and then you begin to implement those goals. And it's a big deal, and takes a lot of work and dedication. And we were certified 11 years ago, and Sharon really worked hard. I wasn't here, but I know. I've been through that process at another congregation. It's a lot of work, and I just want to say thank you so much for all that you have done to help our congregation live its values. And my goal as developmental minister is to help us get going again with the next steps. And I don't know exactly what those are, and that's why we're having a conversation right here and on Zoom after the service. I think I said 12:20. If we finish a little early, maybe it'll be 12:15. But you'll have plenty of time to go get some coffee and then come back and join us. And I hope many of you will. I just want to make it clear, so I always like to say this, when you come to an after-church conversation, you're not signing up for a committee for the rest of your life. This is really brainstorming, environmental earth brainstorming. So I hope that you will come and join the conversation, and so we'll have somebody taking notes, and this, I think, will be a really good launch as we begin to think about what are the next steps? What are the next milestones on this journey as we, as Unitarian Universalists, live our values of love and compassion, as Angela said so well, for the earth. And Angela, thank you for that wonderful reflection. Amen. I couldn't agree more that we must perceive the earth and relate to the earth through the lens of compassion and turn that compassion into a way of life. The earth most certainly is, as Angela said so well, a sacred gift, not a resource to be exploited. And the spiritual practices that Sharon and Angela shared with us and talked about are essential for deepening our relationship with the earth, and we can always deepen that relationship. We can, again, as Angela said, each and every one of us can become a compassionate activist. And I love that term, and I'm going to borrow it from you religiously moving forward. So let me just take a few minutes to talk with you a little bit about the climate crisis and what we as people of faith are called to do about it. And as I started thinking about what I wanted to say today, I decided to go into that folder on my laptop and look at some of what I've said in earlier Earth Day sermons. And one thing I noticed right away in reading what I've said in the past was that I spent a whole lot of time debunking the claims of those who denied the reality of climate change. These so-called climate deniers scoffed at data that not only showed that the Earth is warming and that the climate is changing, but that also pointed to the fact that climate change is most assuredly a result of human activity, wastefulness, irresponsibility, greed. But facts never stop the deniers from accusing those warning about climate change of having a chicken little, the sky is falling mentality, and of pushing a radical environmental agenda that would hurt the economy and put people out of work. Now, in case you're wondering if I'm warming up for an updated version of my climate change stump sermon, I'm not, because I think something has begun to shift over the last few years in the way people are thinking and talking about the climate crisis. You see, while much of the public conversation a decade ago was between those who accepted the overwhelming evidence of climate change and those who denied it, I feel that climate denial seems to be a little less prevalent, a little more muted than it was, say, 8 or 10 years ago. Even some on the political right are beginning to at least acknowledge that climate change is a reality, even as they continue their stalling tactics and such as they try to weaken or roll back laws and regulations that seek to reverse climate change. But as the deniers have grown less vocal, I have come to understand, and Sharon shared a wonderful well, maybe not wonderful, but a very informative article that she read recently in the Washington Post about a new set of voices or perceptions that have emerged. Voices that most assuredly accept the reality of climate change, but who feel that it's too late to do anything about it. This article calls these folks climate doomers. And these doomers are responding to years of dire warnings about an impending climate crisis, catastrophe, with feelings of despair and resignation and hopelessness. Now, let me just say that unlike the climate deniers, these so-called climate doomers are not ignoring or doubting the reality of climate change. They are not polluters who want to gut regulations or developers who can't wait to level more and more acres of rainforest. Rather, these folks are struggling with the reality that, quite frankly, does look kind of grim, and I have nothing but compassion for their feelings and their despair. In fact, I have to admit there are times when I share those feelings and wonder if my grandchildren's world will be racked by frequent climate crises that threaten the very survival of our planet. Now, while feelings of climate doom are understandable and are worthy of compassion, they are, in the long run, just as potentially harmful as climate denial. Think about it. Doom and despair, they are a path to resignation, paralysis, inaction. If we allow ourselves to be engulfed in negativity and hopelessness, climate doom will become a self-fulfilling prophecy. And those of us who can still do something today to help stave off disaster in the future we will be just as responsible for the world I fear my grandchildren will inherit, just as guilty as the worst polluter or the worst destroyer of the rainforests. So if we cannot give in to climate doom, what do? I don't know how many of you are familiar with our UU World magazine. How many of you receive UU World, read it on a reasonably regular basis? Well, this is for those of you who don't know what UU World is, it's our national Unitarian Universalist publication that comes out, quarterly now, I think? And it comes out both online and still in some print forms. And the latest issue, I'm not sure when it came out, but it was not too long ago, includes a really interesting article by former UUA President Bill Sinkford that I highly recommend you look at. And in that article, Bill shares a story that was told some years ago by the late science fiction writer Octavia Butler. Do we have any Octavia Butler fans in the house? We do. Some years ago, when Butler was having a conversation with a group of young people about all the problems and suffering in the world, some of which she included in her novels and stories, one of them finally asked her, well, what's the answer? And her response was not what they were expecting to hear. She said, there is no answer. Well, that was not what they were hoping to hear. So the young people began to wonder if this writer that they admired so much was trying to tell them that the world is doomed, that there's no solution to suffering and injustice and so on. But when pressed to explain her response, Butler told the students that what she meant was that there's no single answer, no one solution to all of our problems. Rather, as Butler said, there are thousands of answers. And then she looked at the students and said, you, all of you, can be one of those answers if you choose to be. And I think it's that idea from Octavia Butler that gives me hope for the future and helps me to deal with my own feelings of climate doom. The idea that there is a single answer, that there has to be one plan that everyone across the world can agree on that will completely solve the climate crisis, that seems pretty hard to fathom, if you ask me. But as Butler was pointing out, and I think as I've heard scientists argue, the climate crisis is a problem that has many answers that need to be pursued by many people at many different levels. For example, individuals, each and every one of us, are part of the answer because we can change the way we live, how we consume, and what kind of footprint we leave on our neighborhoods and our local communities. Institutions and organizations, like religious communities of all sizes, we are also part of the answer because we can change our behavior and we can help influence the behavior of others. And then, of course, public policy and international agreements and treaties, they are also an answer. None of these answers by themselves will reverse the climate crisis. But together, those answers, our answers, can make a difference. And let me just say something about the answer that this congregation has been offering in the past and is still currently offering. Over the last dozen years, the UU congregation of Charlottesville has taken measures to reduce our carbon footprint. I'm not sure how many of you are aware, because we don't talk about it as much as I think and celebrate it as much as we should, but how many of you are aware that this congregation has solar panels on its roof? You can't really see them very easily unless you're kind of looking up that way or if you go up to the second floor. They were installed, roughly a dozen or so years ago, and I have learned during that time that they, along with other energy-efficient improvements to our building that have been made, have now probably account for about 15% of the electricity that we consume. That's electricity that was not generated by fossil fuels and it did not contribute to climate change. Many thanks to John Semmelhack. I don't know if John is here today or not. Many thanks to John, who got a very last-minute email from me asking about any thoughts he would have about numbers and the improvements that we've made. He also wanted me to mention that very recent changes to our HVAC system, in which we switched from a fossil fuel burning gas boiler to an electric heat pump for the sanctuary was a huge step forward. And we have to really thank the late Glenn Short, who was a passionate environmentalist and who provided the funds for us to make those upgrades. And they are making another huge difference in reducing the size of this congregation's carbon footprint. Yay, absolutely. Because there isn't one answer, one person, one government, one policy that will alleviate the climate crisis, I am convinced that much of the struggle against climate change is going to be led by and come from the bottom up rather than from the top down. That's why I think what congregations like ours need to do is to follow the lead of Sharon and Angela, and as we try to make as they did, a deeply religious and I would say spiritual argument for saving the planet. Unitarian Universalism makes such an argument, and on moral, ethical, and religious grounds, and we need to do more to share and live our message. Above all else, what I think the world needs is a religiously and spiritually grounded civil rights movement for the planet. And my hope and my dream is that Unitarian Universalism and the UU Congregation of Charlottesville will be both active participants and leaders in that movement. Friends, there's no doubt about it. The heat is on. Those who are worried about the future of our planet have good reason to be worried. The planet is warming, CO2 levels are climbing, Arctic ice is melting. We find ourselves in the midst of what is the greatest threat to the web of life, and I would say to humankind, in all of recorded history. The question before us now is, will we continue down the same road, making the same choices stemming from our endless pursuit of more and more? Will we give in to the paralyzing fears of climate doom, throwing up our hands saying, it's too late? Or will we make another choice and follow another path? A path grounded in a moral and spiritual understanding of our place in the universe. A path that is rooted in humility, in appreciation for this marvelous planet that is our home, and in a commitment to sustaining the web of life for ourselves and for all who come after us. That, friends, is our obligation. That is our calling. That is the moral and religious challenge of our time. The time is now. The heat is on. Amen, and blessed be.